All right, so thank you everybody for coming to our session today. We're going to be covering an interesting new topic, what we call the fifth element. So I've gotten the room in here, AK sitting next to me. Eventually he'll come in and sit in here and he'll be doing his presentation. And myself talking a little bit about the Power Pages. So what is Power Pages? Why was it introduced? What's the difference between Power Apps portals and Power Pages? And we'll have a look at how it can be implemented. Just a quick demo showing the out-of-the-box configuration capabilities and the power of Power Pages. And then AK we'll be looking at maybe some of the more challenging bits with the customization and answering the L question, licensing. Is that correct, AK? Giving us a little bit of insight on what's going to be happening in that space. This is an interactive session, so feel free to just jump in and ask a few questions. Hopefully we'll be able to hear you, and AK, again, sitting next to me, can be listening to the questions and feeding back to us. Okay, so I'll start by just covering a little bit of news, just in terms of what's going to happen in the next month. And then I'll start by doing a quick overview of the pages, and then AK will then carry on with his customization bits. Cool. So part of the news, we were just discussing that before we started the session in terms of there's a new conference happening in September. It is an in-person conference, and also there'll be sort of broadcasting some of those sessions live. So for people that cannot attend the conference in person, they can go and watch it on demand. So this is happening in September, from the 20th till the 22nd, and there are workshops before and after the conference. If you're lucky enough, you'll be going to Orlando, Florida to go and attend that, but otherwise, feel free to just watch those things retrospectively. Lots of really awesome speakers. We're talking about our VP, Charles Lamana, who's going to be talking a lot about the high level, where's the direction that the Power Platform is taken. And then as you can see through all those different presenters, they're all the champions or the product program managers or the product managers that look after specific pockets of the Power Platform. So Ryan Cunningham at the bottom right there was the one that came and sort of was our keynote speaker at the New Zealand Business Application Summit last year. So obviously he looks after the Power App side of things. Julie Strauss is the Pro Dev sort of experience expert. She knows a lot about everything that is going to be in that space for those that like the geeky stuff. Obviously, AK was pointing to Scott Hanselman. He's the genius at Microsoft behind ASP.NET. And ASP Classic, if I'm not mistaken. He did come to New Zealand once in the past, and yeah, he's just an absolutely phenomenal guy, very charismatic, very knowledgeable about everything he does. Heather Newman looks after the community platform, so this is all the user groups and so on, and many others as well. So feel free to just attend and listen to those awesome speakers in there. Obviously, there will be some Power Pages stuff done by Sangya, who actually looks after the platform itself. And there are other speakers on top of those featured Microsoft speakers. Some of them are MVPs, including Lisa Crosby from Australia that will be flying to Florida, to Orlando, and then presenting in there. So awesome conference. Feel free to go and attend. Lots of good value in there. Cool. So let's talk about Power Pages, and let's have a look at what is Power Pages and how it needs to be done. So some of the slides that you will see are actually recycled from some of the official Microsoft presentations done by Dilip Singh, who is the product manager for Power Pages. And I've summarized a few things here and there, and then just sort of focused it so that we've got something concise within that we can present within the hour and give you that sort of quick overview of what Power Pages is. So as Dilip would put it, Power Pages is basically Power Apps Portals plus. So the way you know Power Apps Portals is largely the same as Power Pages. And in fact, he went on by saying that anything that you can do in Power Pages, you can already do in Power Apps Portals, for the exception of the Design Studio that we'll demonstrate today. And the vice versa is correct. Everything that you can do in Power Apps portals can also be done in Power Pages, obviously, because it's an evolution of the existing platform. So in other terms, any customer that already has Power Apps portals already implemented will automatically be upgraded to Power Pages in GA. And it's not really an upgrade, it's just enabling new features that will turn it into Power Pages. So if you know Power Apps portals, you will find Power Pages extremely simple to use because it's nothing but making it even more intuitive and sort of reducing that learning curve. And then and there's nothing you have to do to get it, basically. Microsoft will do it for you. So don't worry about an upgrade path. Don't worry about, oh, do I have it? Do I not have it? Even the licensing will mainly remain the same. There are a few changes that will be announced in GA. Maybe AK has a little bit of insight on that, but it's something to just know about. So yeah, you know, the thing that they're trying to do is bridge that gap between Fusion teams. So we've got the pro developers that tend to be the ones doing Power Apps portals at the moment. They want to make it easier for the low-code audience, the citizen developers, to actually be able to do those changes using the design studio as opposed to rely on pro devs to do the work. And it was a little bit convoluted in the previous versions on how you need to do it. There was a steep learning curve. You really needed to know where everything is. And it was a little bit disconnected, disjointed in a way. Like, for example, I would create a page, but then I would not be able to know where to give permissions unless I knew that I had to go to a specific location and give people permission to that page so that they can view it. Now everything is embedded, everything is in line. It minimizes the amount of clicks and navigating away that you have to do and embeds everything within that experience. And then on top of that, they're adding the site administrator capabilities, also in its own nice little pocket where they can go and have a look at it. So from a pro dev developer, they've also introduced a few extensions. Those extensions are add-ons to VS Code, so Visual Studio Code, that would again simplify the development of Power Pages. And also they've added some additional support in Azure DevOps, ADO, as well as GitHub Actions, so that they can help you with the application lifecycle management, so that you can deploy those changes. And I'm not saying it's all the work is done. There's still some enhancements available on the roadmap. As we know it right now, everything that you have in Power Pages is basically data. So when you're deploying it, you're deploying data. There's some work that is being done in the background to just make it a little bit smoother and easier to transfer from one environment to the other. So let's have a look at the pillars behind Power Pages. So we've got the low-code maker experience, and we'll talk a little about what does that look like. What are the different sections that someone can go through, the hubs, the sort of the landing page, the design studio, what's in the design studio, and what can be done in that space. For the pro devs, we will have a look at the different tools and capabilities where we can go and edit that. So we can now work with HTML code. We can use Liquid. Where is that now available and how we can do it? How does that VS Code extension work and how we can use that? And specifically, how to use the Pack CLI. So the Pack CLI is the sort of Power Platform command line interface that allows you to get the latest that you have in your portal, but also to upload it back into your portal and then do all those edits in a code editor, such as Visual Studio Code. And then finally, they bundled all of that site administration stuff in one location where you can work on your identity providers. So identity providers are basically the different providers that will allow you to authenticate. So whether you want to use Microsoft Live, you want to use Facebook, you want to use Google, or you want to use Azure B2C. And in the case of New Zealand, for example, quite often we would use RealMe authentication. So RealMe is an identity provider. It's provided by the government. And then basically you can configure it using Azure B2C to link those two together and then allow people to log in into your portal using RealMe authentication. And then permissions and so on, and portal setup and security that we'll briefly have a quick look at. So I think the next slide is the demo, if I'm not mistaken. Any questions before we jump into the demo? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Cool. So what I'm going to do is maybe start with the landing page for Power Pages and just give you a quick overview of what that would look like. So I'm using my DXC tenancy. And in there, as you can see, there's a bit of navigation. This is the landing page, and it will show you the different bits that you can have. You can have multiple environments as well. Part of each environment, you can create a different site, right? So this is one instance, if you want, Dynamics instance, and it has one site hosted on it, which is the one that I've created a couple of days ago called the Wellington Dynamics User Group 01. Right, so in here, this is your landing page. It will show you all the sites that you've got. You've got some templates as well. So if you want to start with a specific template, you can go and have a look at that and say, all right, let me choose this template and trigger a new site based on that. And the most important thing is that you've got the Learning Hub. The Learning Hub is actually really good to get started. It really takes away that steep learning curve and shows you some videos, some examples on a step-by-step what you need to do to learn Power Pages. So you've got tutorials and videos, you've got some connectivity security and some documentation on what to do in specific areas. All this is actually doing is taking you to the official documentation, which is, sorry, I had the page open. Just open it in there. So it takes you to Power Pages, so docs.microsoft/Power Pages, and you will see something very similar like the video tutorials, the go live, security, getting started, and so on. And then as you go to any one of those, so I'm just going to click on one of the links, it will take you to the actual navigation. So this is everything that is provided within that documents and all the tutorials, including the step-by-step video that you can watch. Those videos are usually 1 to 2 minutes long, so very simple, very straight to the point, and then they'll help you get started and then really build whatever you're trying to build. So now that we've seen that, I'm going to go back to this homepage, and I'm going to go and edit that site that I've got available in there. So I'm going to click on the edit button, and this is going to take me to the Design Studio. So this is the new part. This is what Power Pages is all about. This is where all the investment, all the enhancements has taken space. Now, what I'm going to do is just take that to the left-hand side and take this part to the right-hand side. So what we've got in here is the usual modern editor for a Dynamics 365 app. So this is model-driven apps. And in here, if you've used it before, you're probably familiar with it, but you've got your navigation that is on the left-hand side. You've got the pages. So you can say, I want to add a new page. That page is either a table or a dashboard or some custom page that I'm building and so on. You click on next and you go and navigate it. So this is the modern designer for model-driven apps. If you look on the left-hand side, this is the Design Studio for Power Pages. And what you will notice is that they're using the exact same look and feel, the exact same. I want to add a page in here. So there's a plus button that allows me to add a page. There's this navigation that is going to take me to the pages, the styling, the data, similar to what we've got in here, the pages, the navigation, the data, and so on. So they try to keep that consistency across it. And as I was watching a few videos where they were talking about the launch of that product, they said, oh, but that looks the same as the SharePoint page designer, that looks the same as some other Microsoft product. And Dalip Singh was actually smiling about that. He said, that's because it's the same code base. So they didn't reinvent the wheel. They reused that capability across the different platforms just to avoid that steep learning curve and to ensure that everybody can use it without a lot of sort of support and a lot of learning. So I'm going to close the model-driven editor, and now I'm going to focus back on those pages that I've got in here. So this is the main editor. I started by using a specific template that is available out of the box. And then as I can sort of expand and collapse all my different pages, I can add another page, and here I can select a specific layout. I can give it a name. So for example, sub page 2 that I've got, add to the main navigation, click on add, and then it will add that page in here. I can move it and then sort of promote it and demote it. to a specific environment. So let's say I'm going to just put it in here. It will automatically become under pages. And then there's a live preview that is showing me what's happening on the right-hand side. So it's a, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, drag and drop capability that really simplifies the creation of all those pages. In the past, we have to go into the portal management, model-driven app, and do all of that relatively manually. And unless you knew what you were doing, it wasn't as intuitive with what we were doing in here. So what I'm going to do next is start adding content. So this is what we can see in here is relatively static. There's a few things that you can do. So for example, when I select a specific section, I can do some of that behind the scene HTML editing. So I can go and maybe do some alignments. I can add some, margins, padding, spacing, and so on. Add a background. So I can play around with the look and feel. Nothing too fancy. If it actually gets a little bit too fancy, or I do need a little bit more control, there's that view at the top in here where I can say, actually, I want to see it in code mode. So when I click on that, I can see the code behind that page. So a little bit more on that later, but I'm just going to park it for now. So in Power Pages, similar to Power Apps portals, we've got that concept of basic forms, or what used to be called entity forms, and also entity lists, or what they call now lists. So we can basically embed a dynamics form and render it in a way that would look like it's actually hosted and meant for the portal. So I'm going to do that in those two pages. The first one is I'm going to create a form where someone can say, I would like to attend, or I want to record my attendance. So I've already created that schema over there. And in case you want to know how to do it, again, everything is embedded within the Design Studio. So if you want to create a table, you want to create the views associated with it, you want to create the forms associated with it, you do it within your studio. So in here, I can click on plus table and I can give it a few names, and then I can go and create it. So just that section over there. And I've already created the attendance table in there. A table is an entity in terms, in case you're familiar with the older terms. So I click on attendance. I've got a table with some data associated with it. I can add new columns if I want to. Again, this is very similar to the Power Apps Designer, where you can go and add, configure your schema and do all the work within that studio environment. I can create my views. So even though those look like specific views that I used in Power Apps itself, or the Power Platform, those can be translated into a view that will be displayed on the portal. And then we'll have a look at how this is going to be rendered. So you basically build them once, and then you can reuse them either internally in your model-driven app or in portals itself. And then the last bit is the forms. So again, same editor as what we've seen in the past. So I can go to my portal form, for example. I can drag and drop the different attributes that we've got in that portal form, and I can just set it up so that the way it looks on that screen in here is the way it's going to look on portals. So let's quickly have a look at what my form looks like. Very simple. I've got the name, I've got a date, and I've got a fact whether I attended, yes or no. Now, interesting fact is that you can actually include PCF controls, or code components, as they call them now, which are custom components built. Even though they are built for your model-driven apps, they can actually render as well on Power Pages. Okay, so let's go back to our pages and let's embed that form that I've just created over there. So I click on, so this is a section, an empty section, and I want to add something in there. I can add a few things like a video, an image, a button, text. So this is more or less static, a spacer. List and forms is where it starts getting dynamic. Power BI as well, if I want to, or an iframe if I want to refer to something else. So in my example, I want to add the form, and it's going to ask me what form. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry, maybe I pushed the button by mistake. So I'm going to create a new form, even though I have created those forms before, just to show you what the experience looks like. So in here, it's going to ask me 3 questions. So which table do you want to select? Which form of that table do you want to display? And then to sort of give it a name in there. So I'm going to say this is going to be for attendance. And you will notice the weird prefix in there. It's because I've created it within the default solution. So this is a custom table that I've added in there. Attendance. And then automatically it goes and looks for the existing forms that are associated with that. Portal forms is the one that we just had a look at. So I'm going to click on portal forms, and then I'll give it a name, Wellington Power Platform UG1, whatever, and then click on OK. And then eventually this is going to render in there. So there's a question by Chris Ben on where is the table actually created? Is it in Dataverse or is it somewhere else? Yes, it is in Dataverse. So think of Power Pages as just a user interface on top of your Dataverse. So you've got Power Pages, which is portal customer facing. You've got your model-driven apps and your Canvas apps, which are more internal facing, but the foundation under it is all under Dataverse. So all those pages, even the pages themselves that I'm creating right now are data in Dataverse that is hosted in there. And all the configuration that I'm doing in terms of the data and the tables that dynamically generate on that page in there are also stored in Dataverse. So it's one and the same. And here you go. So this is the name, the date, and the yes, no, I'm attending that is rendered in there. You will notice it looks slightly different than what was originally done on the form. And that's because the form is just a representation of what we want onto that page. And then it renders it given the directive of what needs to be done in here. Now, this is one step. So the next step is actually, I don't want that caption to be in there. I want to make sure that I've got the right permissions in there. And as you can see, just the fact that I clicked on it and hovered in there, I get all those options embedded within my experience. So I don't have to navigate away. I don't have to guess where the permissions are actually hosted. I can just click on that and it will understand the context and help me do it. So let me edit the form. Let me remove those CAPTCHA requirements. And everything else I would like to keep as is. On submit, I'm going to say success. Just have a message in there. I'll probably spell that. And you can put whatever. So you can say on submit, I want to do something else. And it could also include redirecting to a specific page or redirecting to a URL. Click on OK. I've reconfigured it, and now it has been updated to include the right information that I need. Let's work a little bit on permissions. So as you can see, I've already created some permissions in there. What I might do actually is just to see if I can actually remove those. Actually, I'll just reuse them. So I've created a couple of permissions, and let me show you what creating a new permission looks like. So it asks for a name, like what do you want to call that permission? And you can say access to attendance, for example. And it's related to the table attendance because it knew that that form comes from the table attendance, and it automatically highlighted that. And what sort of access type do I need? So this is basically restricting who has access to this information. So is it global access? Everybody is going to have access to it. Or is it specific access related to the contact or to the account or self-access? So I'll explain a little bit about contact and account. So basically, if there is on that specific record, I am part of that record. So there's an attribute that says Rami is actually part of that record, then I'll be able to get that access to that record. If I say global access, regardless of who is on that specific attribute, then they will get access to it. And then account is basically saying that if I belong to an organization and that organization is highlighted as an attribute on that form, then by proxy, I will get access to that record. So this is basically embedding security within Power Pages. And I think this is the big value add of Power Pages. So, we can build our own MVC application if we want to, by saying that there's a data source called Dataverse, and then we connect to it, we retrieve the information and display it on our screens. Relatively easy nowadays with MVC and ASP.NET and all the goodness with ASP Core and so on. But then getting the security right is a massive undertaking. On top of that, all the goodness that you get out of the box with this platform in terms of static code that is available and they're managing it, deploying it. All of that is the value add that if you want to start from scratch is going to take you a long time to get right and to implement. So once you select that, okay, if the person is actually part of that record as a contact, then they will get access to it. The next question that it will ask me is, what is the name of that attribute? What is that relationship? And in here, it looks into my attendance table, and it looks for any many-to-one relationships to contact. And there's one called attendee. So if I select that, then I basically say, if Rami is set as a value to the attribute attendee on that form, then Rami will be able to see it. Otherwise, he won't be able to see it. And this is how you segment and you ensure that people are not looking at each other's records. And now you have that you've defined the scope of how that permission works. Then you can say, all right, well, once we've established that, what sort of access do they get? Do they get read access, write access, create, append to, delete, and so on? And then the last bit is, to which roles does that apply? So as you log in into a portal, you get assigned a role. So are you an administrator? Are you an anonymous user, as in you're not logged in? Or are you an authenticated user, as in I've logged in, I know, they know who I am, I've got an authenticated user. So those are the three that come out of the box. You can create more if you want to. So let me cancel that and quickly have a look. So I've got two security roles that I've done in there. The first one is read. So let's rename that to read to attendance. And basically it's saying that if I belong to that contact in here, also if my name is on the contact, then I can read this information, and I need to be either authenticated or an administrator. So save that. And the second one is who can create the record. And same thing, I'm saying that, you know, in order to create and append to, then I need to be authenticated in there. So that's all good. So I'm happy with that. So the next thing is, okay, I've built my page, I've seen how it looks, and I want to go and test it. I'm going to click on preview. So when I do that, it's actually giving me the option to either scan a QR code that will take me through a mobile interface, or I can go to my desktop straight away previews. And I click on that, it opens the preview of the pages. Any changes that you do are automatically reflected on portals. You don't have to save, you don't have to do anything else. I am logged in, that's why I can see that screen right now. I'm going to say, you know, this is test Wellington Dynamics UG 123. Just add some information. Again, because on the form, those were mandatory fields, then they become mandatory fields on the portal. And I click on submit, and then it's going to come back and tell me success, which is the sort of the message that we configured in there. So really easy to create those forms that can be populated and submitted, driven by data that is available in Power Pages or Dataverse. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the landing page, which is pages. I'm going to add a list in there, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a new list, again, starting from scratch. I want to do that for the attendance. And it automatically goes and looks at all the available views, part of my entity. So I'm going to say it's the active entities, and I'm going to call it active attendance 2. And then I'm going to click on OK, and then it will slot those pages in there, or those records in there. So again, I can only view it if I belong to that record. So before I actually go and do the preview, let me quickly go to the data, and let me quickly have a look at the records that were created in there and see what are we expecting to see on that page. So there should be 3 records, if I'm not mistaken. So let's go to attendance. Okay, so there's 3 records. A couple of them I created yesterday. 2 of them where Rami is the attendee, and 1 of them where Rami is not the attendee. So if everything goes well, if I navigate now to that page, I should be able to only see 2 records because I'm not part of the 3rd record, and just to demonstrate how the security works. So let's do a preview in there. And then that takes me to the page. I think we put it in there as it loads. And here's the list loading. And as you can see, only 2 records are showing out of the 3, because now the security permissions, the entity permissions are triggering, table permissions, as they call them now, and only showing us the value that we can see. really straightforward, really simple in terms of how we want to implement it. Cool. So part of the sort of the design studio, we had a look at how we can actually build those pages, add content to it. There's obviously heaps more that we can do. I just showed you how to create a list and how to create a page. You can do wizard-like pages that will take you through like a progression. So fill in the first page, fill in the second page, fill in the third page, submit the whole thing at the end. You can go through some customization that AK will talk about. You can talk a little bit about security and so on. And then each one of those sort of navigations on the left-hand side is what they call the different workspaces. So this is the pages workspace, the styling workspace, the data workspace, and so on. We covered pages and data. Styling is where you can basically build the look and feel of your portal and then introduce all of that styling. You can do custom CSS if you want. It's driven by Bootstrap, so as long as you know what you're doing from a styling perspective, then they provide you with the interface to actually do it either out of the box using this tool or using custom CSS. And then the last bit is more on the administration side of things, so the setup. So in here you can see the identity providers. Right now, all I've enabled is the local sign-in and Active Directory Azure AD. And this is how I've logged in. But then if you want to do real me, then you would focus more on Azure B2C, for example, which is that one. Or if you want to do external identity provider, Twitter, Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, Microsoft, and so on. So all of those are available in there to be enabled and configured based on what you've got. Yep. So there's a quick question from Monica. Hi, Monica. Just regarding JavaScript, obviously, yep, this can certainly be done just the exact same way that we can do it in the previous implementations. Are you going to cover some JavaScript, AK? Okay, so AK. So this is the good thing, is that if there are any difficult questions, I say AK will answer the question. He's the expert, not me. Right, so there's quite a few things that we can do in here, administration side of things. So actually, if I click on the admin settings, that will say this is coming soon in this design studio, but you can do to the admin center. And the admin center gives you some additional sort of higher level administration capabilities that you can do. And I will quickly have a look at those. And that might include, for example, managing certificates, restarting the portal, basically doing an IIS restart, and then some additional capabilities that are available in there. So when it loads, we'll be able to see that. IIS reset. Still doing IIS reset. It's still built all on that foundation technology. So in here, like if you've got a custom portal URL, if you want to give it a different name, whether your portal is on or off. Again, portal actions include like restarting your portal or just doing some administrative work. It is actually recommended to have your own custom URL, and then you can configure it to use Azure Front Door, and that way it can manage the load, it can manage the out-of-the-box capabilities that you would expect in there. Again, like out of the box, you get the denial of service protection, you get all the goodness that comes from a mature product, as opposed to building all of that from scratch. Managing certificates can be done in here, setting up Power BI, setting up SharePoint integration, and so on. So everything can be managed part of the admin center. So this is a level beyond what you would get with the normal administration that you're after. Cool. So that gave us a quick overview of some of the capabilities available in there. AK, how much time do you need to cover your bit? 15 minutes? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go and have a look at some of the customization in a second. So we've got another question from Monica. Navigation setup can be configured as role-based from the new UI or still follow the old way? That's a good question. AK? Portal management. Portal management. Yeah. One thing that I've noticed is that there's a few things that I'm used to do in the old way, the portal management way, and I'm like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? And you start reading the documentation and says, go to portal management and everyone do it there. So it is a work in progress. They've done the majority of the heavy lifting, but there is still a little bit of reliance on portal management where you can sort of make sure that it does work as expected. Thank you, AK. All right. Cool. I'm going to switch a little bit towards the customization side of things. And I'm going to just give you a quick overview of how it will start and sort of what is required to do it. So as I said, portal data is, portal content is nothing but data. So you go there, you can download it, you can upload it, and when you do a deployment, you're basically saying there's a bunch of records that I package together and then I deploy it. Throughout the years, the community has built a lot of tools to support you with that. You can use things like the XRM toolbox to automatically know what to download, how to search, what to look for. You can do it in the model-driven portal management capability as well, or you can do it now with the PAC CLI. So I've got a bit of a cheat sheet in here that shows a few interesting commands. So the first one is you have to authenticate. So this is the URL of the instance that I'm using. So you authenticate that. Now that you've authenticated, then you can say, okay, show me all the content from that portal, download the content and upload the content. So let's create those one by one. So the first one is using the PAC portal. So PAC CLI, PAC, which is the Power Platform command line interface, and you give it a couple of commands, so Power Apps portal, and then list me all the portals that are available in there. And because I'm already authenticated, I've done that behind the scenes. It will come back, call Power Apps portals and say, all right, you've got 3 portals that are available in there. One of them is the default portal that we've been using. So this is the one that I've been editing. The next thing is I'm going to say is create the directory for me, call it Wellington Dynamics user group. As an example, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, all right, can you please download the content of that portal into that specific folder? So I've got the ID. So this is the ID of our default one. And then I'm just going to put the path in here. So just replace the path with the one that I'm after. And just paste that and then trigger that. So what this is going to do is to connect to the website, and it's already configured to know exactly all of the content that you need to be able to do your configuration and your customization. So as you can see, it will go through each one of those tables and it will look at the page templates, it will look at the files, it will look at the basic forms or the entity forms, the advanced forms, the whole shebang. It will get all the information that you need and download it as either YAML fragments or HTML fragments and put them onto your local machine. And the good thing is that this is very Visual Studio Code friendly. So what I'm going to do once this is done, so as you can see, it takes a little bit of time to download the pages, now the basic forms, the metadata associated with it and everything. And in a way, if you really want to, you can do all the development just by handling YAML fragments. And this is really powerful because that means that everything that you're doing is basically code. So when you go into adding it into your source control, Azure DevOps, or whatever you're using into Git, then it's basically file fragments. As you make your changes, you can upload them. You can see the difference between the previous version, the new version. If you've got multiple people working on it, when they merge, you get merge conflicts. You can deal with them as pure file management. So in here, it created the folder called default portal template, and I'm going to open Visual Studio Code in that specific directory. This is opening VS Code, and it's showing me the entire structure that I've got in there. So remember the basic form that we created. This is the one that we created in there. So portal form, Wellington Power Platform UG1. This is the one we created today. If I expand that, all it has is a YAML fragment that follows the specific entity name, the ID of that form that we've selected. It gave it a name, and then some additional information in there in terms of what will happen in case there's a success measures and so on. Again, if you're a nerd and you really want to, you can go and build everything just by using those fragments. So this is a YAML fragment. Another example would be having a look at, for example, a page that we've created. So web pages. Those are, so this is the sub pages, one that was deleted, another page that was created, page content. And we click on the HTML. So this is HTML code. I actually wanted to have a look at page 2. Page 2 is the one that we created today. And as you can see, it's pure content that is HTML driven. If there is any customization that we've done, or we've added, for example, let me have a look at this one if it appears. Yeah, so this is a good example. So we've added an entity list, and we've added it to this page. So what it did in here is it included that liquid code that says, all right, in here you're going to have an entity list, and it's called, active attendance and so on. So it has all the details that you need as code. You can go and make the changes, and then once you're happy with the changes, just like we did a download, you can say, all right, all my content, just do an upload to there. And then when you do the upload, then your Power Pages are updated in there. So Visual Studio Code friendly. There's some extensions that you can use to help you with IntelliSense, with making the development a little bit faster and easier. And yeah, just takes you to another level basically in there. Any questions just regarding some of that customization side of things? Obviously, now that I've downloaded it into a local folder, that can be a Git enabled folder, which means that then I'm using source control. And once all of that is in the right environment, then moving it from one environment to the other becomes a DevOps responsibility. So you can just take that code, package it, and then move it from one environment to the other. So that's the end of my side and my demo. 15 minutes for AK to just show us the next level of the customization. So over to you, AK.
Right, before we go on, are you using that process in enterprise, in apps that you're developing in the enterprise space now?
Yes, yeah. So Power Pages is still in preview. So it will be available, I think, in the next couple of months, if I'm not mistaken, as generally available, or maybe towards the end of the year, around December. But everything that we're doing with Power Apps portals is definitely used in the enterprise space, and not just like us, but across the world as well. So
that process I'm talking about, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So the content, the files, and all of that absolutely is being used a lot. And this is the good thing about sort of the Microsoft team working on those tools, is that they have ALM as a like first citizen, if you want, because they really want to help with that experience. They understand this is an enterprise tool, and they want to help implementers to use the enterprise tools that will help them in the ALM processes and so on. So it's mature, and it's been used across the globe. Cool. I'll stop sharing. So over to you, AK. Yep, I can see your screen. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, a bit weird to hear my voice again. Right. So thanks, Rami, for covering all these nice and shiny new features. And now I'm going to be more like going to the dirty side and dark side. So here I'm going to cover the advanced customization tips. What we have seen so far is more about building the pages quickly, going through the drag and drop and click through that. But here we're going to cover about some of the advanced customization tips, and also when you have build the portals or Power Pages, what we should be doing to go live. So this is like a go live activity checklist, and also a bit of the consumption cost around the Power Pages. So basically, this is more like a licensing set. And for the advanced customization tips, is mainly around the scripting. So I saw the questions around the scripting in the chat. So that is a very good question. So the reason is because it is more like a multiverse of the script locations. What does it mean is you can write the scripts in web files, you can write in the content snippets, you can write on the web templates, you can write the scripts on the web pages. If you're not enough of that, you can write on the lists and basics forms and web forms. Basically, you can write the scripts everywhere. And that is the problem we always see, the common pattern that we see in the Portal projects and the Power Pages projects. And The problem here is you can do the same thing on the different places. You know, it really depends on the papers, and sometimes it's quite hard to figure out where they did it. So for our past experience, we always recommend writing the web files and the content snippets and avoid writing those scripts in the other places. There's a few exceptions, and we will cover that scenario in the demo. So first of the web files, the web files that we usually tend to use for the large script base, which can be like a library and a framework and the core logic of your web applications or the portals. And another thing that we always encourage is to minify the scripts so that it takes less space, and so it is faster to download it. And also the web files are benefit from caching. So if we write the scripts on other than that web files, it doesn't benefit from caching. So this is another way to improve the performance of the scripts. And the content snippets, yep, so sometimes there's a right use case to use this. Usually we use that for the small script base and business logic that we want to reuse across the different places. And it's also quite useful with the basics forms and advanced forms. And so especially around the dialogue and pop-up type of the scripting. So let me quickly jump into the demo, but to show the different places of scripts that we can write. You can stay here. Yep. Cool.
Yep.
And so I'm going back to the questions in the chat. This is the Power Pages editor. So you can see, you can look at the code base. You can edit CSS and JS. But if you click that, it will actually to go back to the portal management apps. So basically, we're going back to the portal management apps. Like I said here, that you can write scripts here. This is on the web page, custom JavaScripts. We can write on the web template, and also on the form itself. If you scroll down, there's a custom JavaScript. So technically, you can write the scripts everywhere, and it's quite hard to maintain the scripts. So what I will show you here is we got the web files. So this is the library that I use for that, and basically this is the where we use across the Power Pages, and this is the minified version of the library. So basically, these libraries will be loaded on the pages, but when we start to use the scripts, as you can see, so we write it as like the content snippets. The reason here we can say this is a quite lightweight JavaScript, and there's not a lot of hundreds lines of scripts, so we could reuse a content snippet. The reason that we use the content snippet is that content snippet can be easily embedded into the basics forms. So if I go and open for example, the feedback, and so instead of writing the JavaScripts in the custom JavaScripts, I can easily recall the content snippet from the JavaScripts that I have written. So basically, if I have the two different forms doing the slightly different thing, but I want to reuse the logic across the two different forms, I don't need to rewrite on the different JavaScripts, and I could reuse the content snippets. So now I'm going to jump back to the front end portals. Right. So here I used the basics form in two places. One is on create. This is the pop-up dialog, and also it is embedded as the basics form on the page. So here I don't do any like the complex validations. I just want to make sure name is more than one character. So if I say one, and so as you can see, like yes, the validation kick in, and the reason it kick in is because I have the JavaScript. But if I go back to the feedback, this form exactly the same form as what you see on the previous page. But if I do the same thing, you will see the validation is bypassed. The reason is because the way it works is a little bit different. So on the pop-up forms, not all the Power Pages resources are loaded. So as a result, we need to write a few scripts to load for example, like your library. So basically what I'm saying is, hey, load my JavaScript library, and when it is done, make sure it runs my scripts. So syncing the configuration is just like clearing the cache. So now we come back here. When we do that, as you can see, the scripts just kick in, and basically I'm not rewriting the scripts again, just making sure all the necessary resources are loaded on the forms. So this is how we can reuse the scripts across the different resources. And also you can use the same scripts or the syntax to load the CSS files, because when you load the dialog, all the CSS is gone, and basically you can use this type of scripts to do the same thing. So next one. So in terms of a goal activity checklist. So now let's say we have built the systems, all the UATs done, user happy, sign off, and make sure we register the custom domain for the portal, because all the portal is always come with the HTTPS and your name.powersportal.com. So it is always all the other better, because sometimes you might realize that custom domain is not available anymore. So make sure we update the CNAME record with the custom domain to the default URL, so that they can. Sorry, visa delivery. Yep. So that you can map the CNAME record so that they can access with the custom domain name. And also make sure we need to procure the SSL certificate, because this is the mandatory that you need to do if you want to use a custom domain name for the portal. And next thing is another question is do we need the dedicated web application firewall? So Power Pages or the Power Portals, they do have their web application firewalls, but as far as we understand, that is at the basics level. And so, recently that you can see here, recently that we are able to configure the Azure front door with the Power S portals. So basically, you can define your own web. You can put your own web in front of the Power Pages or the Power S portals. So here is a link that you can Microsoft all the documents to do that. But some of the government agencies, some of the clients, you might want to do the Azure front door. Another checklist here is I configure the content delivery network, because basically the CDN, so all the resources that we see uploaded to the Power portals, basically is stored in the database, and it retrieve on real time. But doing the CDN, all these the the static content will be cached in the CDN network so that it also boosts the performance of your PowerOS portals and pages. And to do that, like you can define a content delivery network and what are the files that you want to push to the CDN. And, the caching is a quite a well-known topic in PowerOS portals and pages. So you can also patch the CDN. So probably you might want to patch the CDN every time you make the deployment to the production, just to make sure everything is reflect.
So this is a CDN that you've pre-configured yourself, right? Or it's just come part of?
This can part of the PowerOS portal. So we currently stay in the preview, so you can turn it on, but you cannot choose what CDN. So what we noticed probably that might reuse something like an Azure front door, which you can cache the file and all the CDN capabilities. So in the backend, something is happening, but we don't really know which CDN, but you can patch and you can refresh. So that's the things that we can have. And also like a telemetry monitoring, and this is like it's very easy to do it, but not a lot of the projects that did. So you can integrate with the Azure application inside, or you can even use the Google Analytics to see what is happening with the portal. So is it performing or not? So and so on. And so this is the next one is the line consumption cost, probably our favorite topic. and always confusing and always changing. So for the consumption cost, there's basically two metrics as far as we know, and this is the first portal logins and the page views. So portal logins basically is the day passed to the portal. So once you log in, is less for the 24 hours, and it doesn't count it again. But what we notice is that recently they have added the entitlement to the portal logins. So every time you purchase a one portal logins, you got 200 requests for 24 hours as an entitlement. So it seems to be quite less, 200. And if you are, running a lot of the process, that is probably not going to be enough. And there will be you can get the request, additional request as a pack, or the latest like a pay-as-you-go where you pay for, really tiny amount for the request. So there maybe there's some changes coming up in the PowerOS portal license, and and also another thing is the scaling is really based on the number of portal logins you have. It doesn't really matter you buying like 100 logins or 1,000 logins, but it's a matter of how many portal logins you assign to the instance. So if you got, let's say, 100 logins, but if you are using like 1,000 concurrent users, obviously you are not compliant, and we need to get the additional portal logins to scale up. So as far as we know, this scaling is also automatic. It's based on the number of portal logins assigned to the portals. So next one is the page views. We know like a page view, you can also get a pack, but page views are more like an anonymous access to the portal. So every access to the home page content is that you don't need the authentications that count as a page view. So, anything that replying HTTP 200 without authentications, that count as page view. So, but all the authenticator sessions are exempted. So, but if you log into the portal, but if you go to the home page, it doesn't count as a page view because you have login. But if you don't log in and go to home page, it counts as a page view. So it is quite important to make sure how we properly protect the page using the authentications. So basically, as long as it's written 302, HTTP 302, that doesn't count as a page view. And so this is really important to properly protect the resource using the proper authentications, because we have things like some of the projects, they say they use the the Power Pages or Power Explorer, you have the access control rules to properly authenticate it. But sometimes people tend to use the read or write of the scripts, so they use something like the window.location or href and go to sign in page. So what does it mean is use state page for the page views because we are not properly authenticating the page. So this is something that we need to be mindful, and it's relatively cheap, but there's if we don't have to pay, then we should not be paying that. Is there any other questions around this, the licensing and entitlement? And that's all mine to cover.
Yep. No questions that I can see so far. But any questions, feel free to let us know. I think I might have unmuted your presentation. I do have one final slide, so I'm just going to share my screen, if that's okay. Can you see my screen? Yep, all good. So this is yours, and this is mine. So I just have a few links that are available in there. I tend to use a lot of shortcuts when I'm doing my work. So I've got, and I do them as bit.ly shortcuts. So I use ppmake for the Power Platform make experience. So that's make.powerplatform.com. So I just, create it as a bit.ly link. I've created a new one called pportmake. So this is the portal maker experience, and that will take you to Power Pages I think make.powerpages.microsoft.com. If you want to know more about the portal documentation, which is the link that I showed you before, which is docs, the Microsoft Docs Power-Pages, it's portal doc, so pportal doc, so bit.ly/pportal doc. And finally, the Power Platform conference is available on that link at the end. If you're interested in attending those sessions, feel free to go there. There's obviously a lot that I would like to cover more, and that would go, qualify as a deep dive into the portals. We can probably spend a whole week talking about Power Portals and all the different things that you can do. We basically just skimmed the surface. AK was showing us, how to create your JavaScript, where to set it up, and where to add it. But obviously, with JavaScript, opens a brand new world of things you can do. One of the things that I would like to see in the product is all the goodness of low code that we're currently seeing in Canvas and model-driven apps. And that's introducing some of those Power FX capabilities into portals, meaning you literally use low code to do your validation, to do your, the way the portal behaves, or to do additional actions just by using that low code formula like that we're used to in all the different parts of the Power Platform, and surface those into portals. Then it will really make the development easier and rely less and less on JavaScript. So that's the end of our session. Any more questions before we close the session? Going once, going twice, sold. Cool. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending the session. If you have any additional questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or to go and contact us through our social links. This session was recorded, so I'll just upload the content of that session into the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye.